All right, so you spent hours, painstaking hours, dialing in your mix, everything is perfect, and you reference it against one of your favorite songs or the song the artist suggests, and it looks like one of those guys at the gym that only does chest, all upper body with skinny legs. We're missing all that power. Today, we're gonna talk a little bit about parallel compression and how to get that power. All right, what's up, everybody? EJ here, and this is a nice welcome break. I've been spending most of the morning mixing, and now I've actually screwed this intro to the video up 2 times, so I don't want to know what I look like, my hair looks like, because I've been pulling at it. But I'm sure you've all been in my shoes where you're working on some mixes and it just takes a lot longer to kind of dial them in and get to that sweet spot, and you feel like you're throwing everything at it and become a little exhausting. So this is a nice little break for me to step away. So thank you so much for supporting the channel and allowing me to make these videos. Today we're going to talk a little bit about parallel processing. And parallel processing, when we first start, I feel is one of the things that becomes this area of being misunderstood and also a dangerous rabbit hole.
I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Parallel processing is essentially strengthening or diluting any signal. I mean, really anything. You could parallel process the mustard on your sandwich if you want by adding a super spicy version of that mustard to your regular mustard in some sort of amount and creating a new mustard blend. That essentially is parallel processing. Often it becomes a synonymous term with parallel compression, and it makes me laugh a lot of times because a lot of people will listen to a mix and, you know, or somebody will be on Reddit or somewhere asking for critiques. People like, you need parallel process or parallel compress your drums or this or that or this. You don't need to parallel process or compress anything. Often now, if we're trying to make modern records, then we want to use modern toys and modern techniques. And if we're emulating a lot of records that are being put out right now, there is a lot of parallel processing going on. So understanding this technique can be very useful. But if we were making a song or trying to mix a song to sound like a Beatles record, we don't really need parallel processing. So as I mentioned, the easiest way to think about parallel processing is what the mix knob does on any plugin. We're bringing in or pulling back a signal. Where we have to start is, what do we want to parallel process? Do we need more punch? Do we need more top end? Do we need the sound to sound a little bit thicker? And instead of piling all of that processing on the original source, we can create a separate auxiliary send, bus, duplicate track, whatever works for our brain to wrap our head around this concept, and put all the processing on that, and then bring that into taste. So what we're going to look at today in the area of the mix that we're at is I'm working on the drums, and I'm looking for just a little bit more foundation. I like the transients, I like the punch, but we're looking to add just a little bit more snap and just a little bit more of a sense of, say, concreteness to the bottom. If we're thinking of the drums like a circle, or any signal like a circle, vocals, anything, we could think of that top end of the circle as our air, as our, intelligibility of the signal, our transient. The middle is really kind of like that tonal center of it, and then the bottom is like the foundation. And a lot of times for me, when I'm using parallel processing, I'm using it to strengthen the foundation of what it is that I'm working on. Because most of the time I feel through EQ and through compression on the source, I can get the right level of openness, airiness that I might need on a signal. That's not to say always, but what I find is that through my process and my workflow, I tend to add some parallel processing, and especially when it comes to compression, parallel compression, to strengthening the lower part. So what do you say we hop inside the DAW, get to today's portion of the mix where we're going to look at the drums and we'll look at some parallel processing.
Okay. There are a couple things from my template I do want to bring in for the drums. So we're going to go to here. I haven't gotten to the bells yet, so actually let me do that first. So we know we want to make a moment here. Try H delay. Always save. And let's import. Here I am. That's EJ's mix template. I am EJ, and here's all my versions in the folder. This is the most recent one. I actually updated this month. And okay, first I have to change the routing because they're routed to my drum mix group, and I don't have my drum mix group imported. So you are going right to the submix. Okay, and the first thing I have is a kick thump, and the kick thump has almost kind of like the Bob Powers DBX trick on it, so it's just a DBX to help get the transient snap. And then after that, Pultec pinned, and I'll play with which frequency works best, and then an extra transient shaper, which again will dial in. So let's go down to our bass drum, and let's send you over to the kick thump. Bring you up.
11.
So just a little bit more definition and space around the bass drum. I'm going to turn up my speakers louder now. I've been listening around 60 decibels roughly, and just kind of get a sense of what it's doing with the low end and make sure that, you know, when it's really kind of pinned, all of a sudden it's not just a big cloudy mess.
Say what?
11.
Okay, not a cloudy mess. Moving on. Fat snare. Have a gate because I use this a lot for when I record bands live, and I don't want all the extra cymbal and hi-hat bleed in this, so I gate the snare. But probably in this situation I'm not going to need to, so I'm just going to bypass it. And then I'm just pushing into a Neve, and right now I don't really have anything going on with it. It's just Neve in, and then I'll kind of dial to taste where I feel the best frequencies to boost are, and then that is pushing. Let me keep this here into the version of a CompX compressor, which I have the hardware unit that I use a lot, and I like what it does to transients. It kind of keeps some of the snap, but then also puts a lot of space around it, and you can really kind of use this to like mangle and get a lot of body. And then from there, same kind of transient designer. So let's
11. Up. 11. Up.
fader.
11. 11. 11.
Okay. Next is what I call the close crush, and that is something that I put all of my close mics through, especially when I'm processing live recorded drums, and that would be any close snare mics, bass drum, and toms, and I just absolutely mangle it.
That's not right.
I start with some cuts, cutting some of the top, and a lot. It's because this gets cymbals, so 4K, and then some mud with a little bit of a roll off, and that goes into a Saturn, which is just kind of doing some saturation. I don't have any frequency bands engaged on it. An NLS, where I'm kind of driving into it on the Neve version. I love this plugin too for guitars, but it's also just like a widener to the wow thing from Cornef as well, to get a little bit of extra width and bigness, smack attack, and then a gate because it can get kind of noisy. So let's just kind of slap this on and hear if it has any place in this mix.
11. Up. 11. 11.
Saturn can mess with phase, and sometimes if I am processing using Saturn, I'll almost put it across everything in that group just to make sure I keep phase alignment. But especially when you're doing things like mangling sounds, adding a lot of saturation, stuff like that, it is good to keep checking phase. And there's no right or wrong answer to phase. It's just really what sounds better to you at that point in time to make sure you're not sacrificing anything. So again, I'm going to turn the speakers back up to make sure that I can hear what's going on in the low end and what this is doing, because I do have my kick drum running to it as well.
11. Up. 11.
Cool. Next, the Frozen Ape, which is just me entertaining myself. It's just a play on Arctic Monkeys. And this, I don't think in any way, shape, or form emulates their drum sound, but it kind of just has a little bit of that vibe. You could see the routing for the Frozen Ape and Drum Dirt is both to something called Drum Mult, which when I do a video on my full mix template, just like I broke the vocals out into a vocal mult, I usually do the same with the drums, except I do it in parallel. So I don't bust clean drums to these mults. I used to do that and then change my workflow. With this version, going to a parallel drum mult, it allows me to kind of tailor things in, again, blending it to taste, which seeing as how I changed around my template, it made more sense to do this in parallel. You could absolutely just have a clean channel for your mult, which I did earlier on in my workflow, and then just blend like I did with the vocal. But I think it's more about your own personal workflow, what works for you, and even what just kind of makes sense to your brain for a particular time. And sometimes just to change things up so that you don't feel so stale when you're mixing. I'm afforded the opportunity to be able to mix and record 7 days a week and have a lot of projects and be booked out, and I try to make it a point every handful of mixes to switch things up, because it can become really, really easy just to kind of pop your template in and just kind of drive the artist's mixes into this template. And that's well and good for getting a certain baseline sound or level of competency to something, but I'm not sure I'm paying the artist's music the full respect it deserves if I'm not really sitting down and asking, how can I adjust what I'm doing to suit the taste? Like in this mix, for example, not bringing in any of my vocal effects or things like that, and trying to draw some stuff up from scratch. These, I would have created them anyway in this because I felt like it called for it, which is why I did bring these in from my template. But every handful of mixes, I do try to switch some things up. So maybe something good if you are at a point in your mixing development where you do have templates and things that you use to every now and then stop and just change some things up or try to find something new to add some new spice and variety into what you do. So we have to just route these really quick to the drum molt, and I don't really think we're gonna need both, if I'm being honest, the dirt and the frozen ape, but we will audition. I usually find the dirt gives me more of the low, and the frozen ape gives me that like kind of crunchy, gritty mid-range.
11.
Out.
11.
And in.
11.
So it puts some space around the drums and adds a little bit of power and grit to the punch. Power and grit to the punch.
Are you okay?
Power and grit to the performance. What do we have on this is the Kush pusher. I have it just to the name of my bus because I've kind of tweaked these. But really just essentially it's the Slap Happy preset, and then I've kind of just have tweaked it over time. So if you have this plugin, you can go to Slap Happy and it'll probably give you a good start. Or you can kind of look at like a 1176, all buttons in, any sort of gritty, punchy compression. And then from there I go into a Fairchild where the threshold's pretty low. If I kind of do this down,
11.
just a couple decibels of compression into Sans Amp. So this is absolutely, if you follow him, like a Chad Blake special as well. All my fear for phase went away just by listening to him discuss it and watching him utilize it. Lexicon, I have it on the indie drum room. That's where some of that space is coming from. And then a transient shape. You're probably getting the point with all the transient stuff is what I try to pick up in my parallel compression is a little bit more transient punch. So this is all kind of transient. And then nothing. Just in case in the middle of a mix I feel like I need to do something to tame it or to even check phase. I'll flip that. And now if we look at the dirt, I'll mute this guy and we'll go to dirt.
11.
So it depends, right? Like there you have that really cool like drum sampled kind of drum sound, like that kind of very low boxy sound, which sometimes I know I'm guilty of, like cutting too much from the drums in those areas. So this kind of puts a little bit of that back in. It's just the Isotope trash plugin, and I think I probably even have it just on its default settings. Dynamic.
11.
Yeah, I have it on the Nasty Boy.
I'm sexy and I know it.
probably just pick that. That was it. And then this is just cutting out. Usually if you get, I'd use it again for a lot of live drums. So that's cymbal energy 101 right there. This is definitely something I picked up from Andrew Sheps, I believe, at some point in time. And as I've just been mixing and doing things, just, you know, hold on to things that I like, that I feel are universal. Don't use them on every mix at all, like, but they're good chains and tools to have, and they keep me from having to go through and recreate them later on when I already know it's a sound that I want. So I actually kind of dig both. Let's see. Awesome. Okay, so now we have everything where I like it, and I feel like we are in the pocket, and it's time to start automating. So a good idea to take a break, rest your ears for a second, and then you know, kind of put the finishing touches on the mix. And this has been, you know, a soup to nuts thing of, you know, importing the files, editing, and mixing, and we've only been at it for, you know, a couple hours at this point in time.
What year is it?
So it doesn't really necessarily need to be this long, laborious process if you're kind of guided by some sort of internal compass as you're moving through the process. So we are gonna get into some automation.
Okay, so where we left this mix is in a static position, where all of our volumes are essentially the same throughout the song. In our next video, we're going to put that final touch on there, which includes volume rides on different instruments, volume rides on actually the mix bus, and even some automation on plugins to really kind of help give some things some width and depth. I hope you found the sections on parallel processing useful. Try those at home, mess around, and find a workflow and a way of doing it that makes sense to you, where you can really feel the benefit of what you're doing and not just doing it to kind of CYA where everybody parallel processes, so I guess I should have it on there. But do it to a sense that you really can feel the true impact it's having on your mix. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments below. And until then, have a great day. See you next time.